Let me shortly introduce the panel of today. With me on stage is, first of all, Marina, our new president, IFR president. And she's also global head of sales and marketing at ABB Robotics. But today she's only speaking in her function as IFR president. Next to her is Dr. Christopher Müller. He's the director of the Statistical Department based at the International Federation of Robotics, and he's the main author of this book. And next in line, Dr. Werner Kraus. He's the chair of the IFR Service Robot Group and also heading the department, or mainly heading the Department of Robots and Assistive Systems at Fraunhofer IPA, which is co-authoring the Service Robotics report we're introducing today. And myself, I will lead you to this press conference. My name is Susanne Bieller, and I'm the General Secretary of the International Federation of Robotics. And now
Thank you, Susanne. Over. So a very welcome from my side also, and we are very excited that you are here today and that we will have the opportunity to present our statistics from 2021. Before we start with the presentation of the numbers, I'd like to put a little bit more information about IFR. So we are a non-profitable organization. It was established in '87, and we are really a communication and networking platform for our members. Today we have about 90 members, and they're in 4 different categories: national robotics associations, R&D institute, robot suppliers, and integrators. And that makes that we have over 2,000 organizations who are indirectly represented in our network and communication platform. And here you can see I will not list all the 90 members, but here you can see the logos of everybody who is part of the membership of the 90 members. If we then continue a little bit what the 3 pillars of IFR is, so what we will focus on today and what the main topic of today is, of course, the robotics industry statistics that is published now. Also important what we do is that we are the voice of robotics industry and the promotion of robotics globally. And we are also very active in policy support, both in the national and worldwide part, and supporting then the adaptation of robotics globally. But today our main focus is the statistics. And before we now really go into details of the statistic, let us talk a little bit about what is a robot, and maybe more important, what is actually not a robot. We use the ISO standard of a robot, so an actuated mechanism that is programmable in 2 or more axes and has a degree of autonomy, moving within its environment and perform intended tasks. Now, another way to look upon it is saying what is not a robot. So software standalone is not a robot. Software is a very important part of a robot, but not a standalone. So that means bots and alike are not a robot. Remote control drones, also not. Voice assistant, autonomous cars, ATMs and alike are not included in this definition. So we will only focus on the ISO definition of robots today. We are not only publishing 1 book today, but there is 2 books that we have. One of them is focused on the industrial robots, and the other one is on the service robots. And if we want to do life very easy, what the difference between an industrial robot and a service robot is, we could just say that the service robot basically doesn't produce anything. That would be the short version. A bit of a longer version, looking upon the industrial robots, they are automatically controlled, they're programmable, they have multi-purposes, they have normally 3 or more axes, and they're used in industrial automation. While service robots are often normally just used 2 axes, and they are normally very application specifics. But you will find the information about both these types of robots in these 2 reports. So with that, I think it's time that we really go into and see what happened then in 2021. And it's really been a remarkable year. And for those of you who was here at the press conference last year, my predecessor Milton, he talked at that time about COVID as an automation booster. And we can clearly say, looking at the figures for this year, that the automation booster has been ignited. And it has been a very strong recovery from the pandemic years. So we have the highest number in history now. We have over 500,000 of units being installed in 2021, and that is an increase of 31%. And it gives us a very impressive CAGR between 16 and 21 of 11%. That also means that the robotic stock around the world is now up to 3.5 million units and has grown with 15% from previous year and can show a CAGR of 14%. Clear is that this growth has been in all geographies, all segments, and with all applications, as we will come back to a little bit more in detail during this presentation. So if you look upon it in figures, we can see that in 6 years, the number of installed robots has more or less duplicated, which is, of course, a very, very remarkable development. And again, it is everywhere, geographically and segment-wise. We had the pandemic years where there was a little bit of a flattening in 19 and 20, but now we are back on record high levels with 517,000. And as I said before, 31% increase. The robot stock is growing, and last year at the press conference, we could tell that we had over more than 3 million robots installed in the robotic stock. That is now up to almost 3.5 million, not really, but almost, and also here an increase of 15%. If we then look upon where and how are the robots used, already 2 years ago, the electrical and electronics area was the area where most units were being installed, and that trend continues now for the second year in a row. There was a growth now of 24%, and it's been a steady growth now since several years. In the automotive and metal and machinery area, last year was a bit of a decline in both these areas, but they are now back, and both are showing growth rates above 40%, especially the automotive, very much driven about the EV development that we are seeing. Plastic, chemicals, and products continue its strong growth with almost 30%, and food also with almost 18%. So all segments showed really a strong and double-digit growth during the last year. If we then look upon service or cobots, if we look upon our cobots, there's a lot of attention in the market today on the cobots, and also here we can show record figures with almost 39,000 new units being installed, which is a 50% increase from the year before. However, the cobots part in the entire market is still not really big. It's 7.5%, but it's growing very, very rapidly. Interesting, especially with the cobots, is that these are not replacing the more traditional robots, but it's really opening up into new segments and new types of customers. So we see a lot of small and mid-sized customer and new applications and new segments using the really interesting technology of cobots. So a 50% increase here, what we can see. If we then look upon it from a geography point of view, also here, strong growth in all the 3 main regions. Asia and Australia showed a growth of 38%, which gives then a CAGR since 16 of 14%. Europe grow with 24%, CAGR then of 8%, and the Americas grow with 31%, which gives a CAGR of 4%. That the Asian Australian region is so large is of course not surprising, since 3 out of the 5 top users of robots in countries is in Asia. What is also interesting is to look upon how different the figures were from 1 year ago, where we had a decline everywhere except in Asia. But as I said, now all the regions are back to growth, and everybody is back higher than the pre-pandemic years. And both for Asia and Europe, it is an all-time high. US still is not, or America, sorry, is not up on the all-time high, but almost here. So also here, a global trend of a very, very strong growth in 21. And if we go down a little bit into the figures per country, you can see that China grew compared to last year with 51%, but all the top 15 largest market more or less showed double-digit growth and very, very strong growth. So also here we see that the trend is picking up everywhere. And as earlier, we see a country that started its robotization travel continuous. So it's really just have a higher and higher usage of robots. Looking into China compared to the rest of the world a bit more in detail, this was also the first time ever that one country, China, has a higher market share than the rest of the world together. So if we sum up all robots in the world together installation, it is slightly smaller in China. That is now 52% of all the robots installed. And also here, a very, very strong growth of China, especially since 2016. And this has been driven of all segments, but also here we see the strong recovery on the EV part. So looking more in only the China figures, and with that, I will hand over to Christoph.
Thank you, Marina. Let's have a closer look at China on the timeline. Here you can see the tremendous growth of annual installations over the past decade. It was a CAGR since 2016 of plus 23% each year. Of course, if we look at individual years, we see some fluctuation, some volatility, which is quite normal. But what we can also see is that in the pandemic year 2020, the Chinese number of robots installed grew, and now it surged by 51% year on year in 2021. And this obviously drives the total for Asia that we report. But even if we had a closer look at the other countries, we would see that the number is growing at different ratios. Have a closer look at the industries. We can see that China has a strong electronics industry, strong demand from this industry, of course, then, and most remarkably, I mean, plus 38% in electronics is remarkable, but even more remarkably, the number of robots installed in the Chinese automotive industry almost doubled, plus 97% year on year. And this is obviously driven by the intent of the Chinese automotive industry, not only to increase the share of what they call new energy vehicles, which is battery electronic vehicles, but also other alternative types of powertrains. And there's a lot of investment going on there, which you can see the results, you can see here in the figures. But also all the other industries are growing strongly. Metal and machinery plus 55%, rubber and plastics plus 22%, food plus 14%. If we compare the United States, in contrast, we can see a rather moderate growth of plus 2% on average each year since 2016. And also in 2021, we had a recovery and we exceeded the pre-pandemic level from 2019. We had 35,000 robots installed in the US, which is the second highest value ever recorded. Numbers in 2018 were even larger. 40,000 unit mark was reached. If we have a look at the industries here, we see a slightly different picture. We can see that traditionally the United States was driven in robot demand by the automotive industry, and we are seeing declining figures here. And on the other hand, we see what we call the general industry, which is manufacturing without automotive, having strong demand for robots. We can see metal and machinery up 66%, plastics and chemicals plus 30%, food plus 25%. Electronics is not fitting in here, minus 23%, but there we had a very strong year the year before, so the base was very high. And this is a general trend that we see in the United States. We see that robotic automation is moving towards the general industry and getting based on more customers than just automotive. On the next slide, we are having a closer look at Germany. In Germany, we have a rather steady market with a growth of plus 3% on average each year since 2016. Last year, we had plus 6%. In 2018, there was a one-off peak. There was very strong demand from the automotive industry. But overall, we see a rather steady development, and interestingly, not that much cyclical behavior, not that much volatility as we know it from other markets. the industries here, that's the German robot market is still very much driven by demand from the automotive industry. We have split this in this figure into two groups: motor vehicles, that is car manufacturers, OEM themselves, and automotive parts with suppliers, which rank 1 and 3. And of course, if you put them together, you can see that the automotive industry is by far the largest customer. Then we have a strong metal and machinery in second. And we also have rubber and plastics demand. And you can see again that the general industry, metal machinery plus 33%, rubber and plastics plus 49%, even electrical electronics plus 10%, pharma, cosmetics plus 15% is growing, while demand from automotive is declining by single-digit rates. So this is, again, a trend that we observe. And in addition, we see a market for, let's call it good enough robots or low-cost robotics that are addressing these new customers in the general industry. What does it mean? It means that we have a lot of very high-performance robots that have a very high speed, very high precision. They are very durable. You can use them for more than a decade, and they are still precise and quick. But for many customers, this is not really a decisive criterion. Maybe they never used a robot before, and buying a very high performance unit is a rather large barrier. And this new segment of low-cost robotics addresses companies that maybe just want to try out robots, but also those who don't have such a need for precision, maybe on the hundredths of a millimeter, or they are satisfied with a robot that is just good enough for what they want to do. And this is really important to get robots in a lower price segment to address these new customer groups. And this is where we think this is driving Germany a little bit and growth here. And this will give me the next topic, trends and forecasts. So right now we are in a situation, we had 31% and we had more than 500,000 units for the first time in history. But at the same time, we still see full order books. So, of course, you all know about supply chain issues, scarcity of electronic components, and this is something affecting robotics in some way, of course, as well, like everybody else is affected. And that's why we think that this year and the following years will still see growing numbers of robot installations. The full order books will carry on at least until the mid of 2023. And there are also a lot of different other effects playing into this forecast. So we have on the one hand, yes, macroeconomic headwinds like inflation or a tightening monetary policy, especially in America and Europe, which is, of course, not good for investment, but we already have the full order books. So in the short run, this will not affect us that much. And then, of course, we have some geopolitical tensions. And this basically, the bottom line here is we have a lot of uncertainty in the economy worldwide. And this is always hampering investment decisions. And still, we see some important markets, some important parts of the world that have more or less strong and strict COVID restrictions, which hamper business activities. As I already said, on the other hand, we have full order books, and we need some time to deliver all these orders and install these robots. We still have strong demand from the electronics industry because scarcity of electronic components means we cannot produce as much as is demanded in the market. So we need more capacity. And there was a lot of political support measures put into place worldwide in the COVID pandemic, which is still active in place. And many of these things like tax deduction benefits and other measures, other political measures are still in effect and are still fostering investment into modern production technology in general. And this, of course, involves robotics. And finally, what we also see in some parts of the world more than in others is labor scarcity. And here we have a lot of developed economies who really suffer from a lack of skilled labor. So for instance, in the United States, we have something that is there called the Big Quit, which means during COVID, a lot of people just withdrew from the workforce, and there are so many open positions that cannot be filled. And to maintain production with the labor force left, we see a lot of demand also from the general industry trying to automate certain tasks to just get along with the workforce they have. Other general market trends that we observe are the re- and nearshoring of production. This is, of course, also a lesson learned from the disruption of supply chains. If my chain is closer, if my supplier or my market is closer to my location, these issues are not that severe. Then again, we have something that we call democratizing robotics, which is what I said earlier. We are lowering the barrier for people to use robots. That is, we are making them easier to use, easier to program, easier to redeploy, and also cheaper to buy. Yes, and finally, we still have the trend for high mix, low volume production, which is something that we can do in a digital supply chain where we can flexibly produce on the customer's needs without having the costs of highly individualized development and production that we used to know from the past. And on the technological side, we clearly see the trend towards sustainable development. This means we are trying, and customers are trying to use their reduce their carbon footprint in production. Robots support this in several ways. Modern robots are more energy efficient, but also the quality provided by a modern robot reduces fewer rejects, so the input-output ratio improves, and this automatically reduces the carbon footprint because the carbon emissions from the rejects are not there anymore. We don't need to produce just to reject it afterwards. We also see advancements in adjacent technologies in, for instance, machine vision, but also in software, artificial intelligence. These technologies are not robotics in the core, but they, of course, help to make robots more efficient, more productive, more reliable. They, for instance, help to do things quicker, more reliably than they were done before. And finally, as Marina already said, human-robot collaboration is a steadily developing field, and we will see a lot of advancements there in the near future. And then switching to long-term growth drivers, here one important issue that I would like to highlight is demographic change. And this is something we have been witnessing for a long time, for decades. We knew what was coming, and these pyramids or these trees nowadays used to be pyramids. We can witness for many countries. Germany, Japan, China are just some examples. We see the share of elderly people, retiring people becomes larger as compared to the small fraction of young people following. And this creates a couple of challenges for all these economies. So for once, these people are missing in the workforce once they retire. And this creates us, in conjunction with the small number of young people, a large problem on the labor market, because we have a labor shortage, old people retiring and fewer young people following. And also what we can also see is that we need a lot of workers in care professions, but we also have a lot of other issues beyond manufacturing, which open up new opportunities for robotics. Just to name some examples, intralogistics in factories and in e-commerce, in professional cleaning, inspection and maintenance, hospitality, agriculture. And I'm glad to hand over to Werner Kraus now. He will present more details on this.
Thank you, Christopher, for the introduction. And yes, well, robotics goes far beyond manufacturing. And when we are looking onto our megatrends, so megatrend, of course, demographic change, but on the other side, also globalization, sustainability, digitization, we see a huge demand in the end user markets for new solutions. So, for example, in the elderly care sector, worldwide, more than 50 million healthcare workers are missing in 8 years. Or also when you are looking into the logistics, it is estimated that in 2026, almost 1/4 of all retail is done online. So there are workers needed, or robots in the warehouses to do order picking tasks. On the other hand side, we are also still building new houses, which means we need also professional cleaning services to clean these new square footages. For example, in the US, it is expected that the building square footage will rise by 39% in less than 30 years. And on the other hand side, we have still too less building capacities. So this housing crisis, we need much more construction. And here the estimation is that 1.6 billion people are missing housing by 2025. So there we have also big challenges. When we are also looking into the food industry, the agriculture sector is also facing big challenges with the climate change on the one hand side. On the other hand side, we have less field available due to building houses. And then we want to also have a glyphosate ban. So we are not allowed anymore, for good reasons, to use pesticides. Therefore, we also need new kind of agriculture solutions that we have really everyone enough to eat every day. Therefore, the question is, what is next? And here we see that service robotics has really can contribute a lot and is contributing already today. The professional service robot market grew by 37% last year. More than 120 new service robots were deployed worldwide. And on the other hand side, we also have 90 million new robots in the consumer markets, which is a grew rate by 9%. So that are, for example, the vacuum cleaner robots, which we are using at home. And these figures are based on a sample of more than 200 companies and 2 associations worldwide, and give a feeling where the market is going to. When we are looking now into the verticals, so that are now the top 6 applications for professional service robots, so which are used in a professional context. So, for example, in the logistics sector, almost 50,000 robots, which is a grew of almost 50%. Then in the area of agriculture, There are 8,000 robots, growth rate by 6%. Also cleaning is rising a lot by 31%. We also see a big growth in the medical and healthcare section by 23%. Hospitality is a lot, so that's the sector of restaurants, for example, 85%. And also in maintenance and inspection, think, for example, to the Nord Stream pipeline, which has a leakage. That's a typical task to inspect such a pipeline with the robot. And there we have also increased of 21%. But now let's look into some of the most important verticals for the service robots. So in transportation and logistics, today, the most robots are such autonomous mobile robots. So they are moving goods, pallets in the logistics, but also, for example, in the restaurant, there are also some AMRs meanwhile deployed, which are driving between the kitchen and the guests, that are all transportation and logistics robot today. And the future trend is that this AMR not only driving on the ground, but they also have robot arms to make also item picking, for example, for micro fulfillment in supermarkets, or to make also pick and carry tasks in hospitals, or also doing the order picking, commissioning in the warehouses. And due to this increased online retail, we have also this big market growth in this area. When we are looking into hospitality, as of today, most of the robots are basically performing information assistance. So it's something like an Alexa on wheels, basically. So it gives you information where to find goods. And we see a clear trend that these robots in the future also are performing physical tasks, for example, like cooking in the restaurants, where we have also a big shortage in this area of hospitality. When we are looking into the medical sector, here we also see a rising demand for assistive systems due to the demographic change. And the state of the art are mainly such robot-assisted surgery robots, like here, the well-known Da Vinci system. But the trend goes here really into rehabilitation devices, as depicted here, for assisting also care people. When we are looking now into the professional cleaning market, we all know the vacuum cleaner, which we are using at home. And more such robots are also used in public areas, which are then professional cleaning robots. And they are also doing their vacuum cleaning and sweeping tasks. And there goes now also a trend that on the one hand side, these robots become more and more autonomously. So they can not only drive at night through the train station, for example, but also during the day, they can drive, for example, through a supermarket to keep the supermarket clean. And here also the market goes into robot with arms, which has two advantages. On the one hand side, the robot can not only clean the floor, but it can also clean, for example, the table, or maybe someday even a toilet. And the second point is that as of today, for these robots, a door which is closed is a natural barrier for the robots. And in future, it might be possible that the robot can also open the door and also move to other buildings and other rooms in an office, for example. Then let's go to the next area. In the agriculture area, most of the robots are, as of today, are really milking robots, which are deployed in farms to milk cows. And as I already mentioned, there's a big demand for weeding robots, and because of the glyphosate ban, and the future trend goes clearly into such field robots, which are doing, for example, weeding tasks. But now let's look into the market structure. We have now seen such top 5 application areas of service robots. And worldwide, more than 1,000 companies are producing, developing, deploying these robots, and around 1/4 of them are located in the United States. And then the other big service robot supplier hotspots are China and Germany. You can also see that there is a combination of established companies and also startups. And startups means that they have, on the one hand side, a product on the market which you can buy actually, but they are not older than 5 years. And we will look into this startup market in a couple of minutes. When we are going to the next slide, we have here something like also a baby boom generation of service robot startups. So that's now the same picture basically as we know it from our demographic change. So this is now an overview of this 1,000 service robot suppliers, about the founding year of them. And we can see that there's a big peak of this birth rate of service robot suppliers from 2014 to 2016. There are almost up to more than 80 new robot suppliers are founded. So there has been a big growth in the market. And we now see that in the last 5 years, not that many new market service robot suppliers emerged on the market. And therefore, we clearly see that these formerly startups are becoming now major and are really selling products to the market in a big scale. And we now see somehow less startups. So currently, we have a startup rate of 12%. So out of this around 1,000 service robot suppliers, 12%, around 130 were founded in the last 5 years. Good. To conclude the presentation for the service robotics, we see that this demographic change, the lack of skilled staff, is really acting as a catalyst. It accelerates the development, deployment, the use of robots. And of course, such a robot is also a question of investment. And the typical service robot users are used to pay salaries, basically. So they are used to pay monthly salary. And now they must think of, okay, I don't find the people anymore. I maybe buy now a robot. So it's a question of paying salary to invest into the robot. So they are switching the cost type. And at this point, robot as a service comes into the game as a new business model. So instead of buying a robot, for example, for 50K, you can basically rent the robot as a service. So you have again a monthly fee which you pay for the robot. And so it's the same kind of cost type for you. And of course, we have lots of technology advances which will further boost the capabilities of the robot. They will become dexterity, they will become intelligent, also connected. And I guess it's really a perfect match of market demand on the one hand side and technology push on the other hand side. Yes, and by this, I hand over to Susanne.
So thank you very much, all the presenters here for presenting the key results. And now we can open the floor to the audience, to you to ask any questions.